Imagine the smell of fresh bread coming from your neighbor's yard, not a supermarket shelf. Every morning, someone kneaded dough by hand, fed the wood-fired oven, and pulled out loaves that were never exactly the same. Today, that same loaf comes from a factory tunnel oven 2 miles long, identical to 10,000 others. This is the story of bread, from backyard craft to global production line, and the bakers who disappeared when sliced white bread became king. For most of history, bread lived in neighborhoods, not factories. It was tied to place, to people, to ritual. Every village had its baker, often the same family for 3, 4, sometimes 5 generations. Fathers taught sons. Mothers taught daughters. The craft passed through years-long apprenticeships where young bakers learned not from manuals, but from watching, failing, trying again. A baker's reputation lived in his hands. You didn't choose bread by brand. You chose by the person who made it. Milling was local and alive. Grain came from nearby fields, ground at stone mills powered by water wheels or windmills. The sound of grinding filled valleys at harvest time. Flour wasn't uniform. It carried the personality of each season, coarser and darker after wet summers, finer and lighter after dry years. Bakers didn't fight this variation. They learned to read it, feel it, adjust their recipes to match what the harvest gave them. Mixing demanded physical intimacy with the dough. Done in deep wooden troughs, their surfaces worn glass smooth by decades of use. No digital scales. No timers ticking in the background. The baker sank hands into the mass, felt its resistance, its elasticity, its moisture. Added water when the dough felt tight, held back when it seemed slack. This knowledge didn't come from books. It came from making thousands of loaves and remembering every failure. The time you added too much water and the bread collapsed. The day you underworked the gluten and it tore apart. The morning you rushed fermentation and the flavor stayed flat. Fermentation was an act of patience. Dough rested in cool cellars for 12 hours minimum, sometimes 24, occasionally 48 for special breads. No commercial yeast packets. Natural yeast floated in from the air or came from sourdough starters maintained like living family members. Each starter had personality. Some exploded with activity, aggressive, fast, impatient. Others worked slowly, building deeper, more complex flavors over time. Bakers learned their starter's moods, fed it, watched it, knew when it was happy, when it was sluggish, when it needed warmth or rest. Kill your starter through neglect. Forget to feed it, expose it to extreme heat, contaminate it, and you lost years, sometimes generations, of microbial lineage that could never be exactly replicated. Shaping revealed the artisan's soul. Round boules for everyday meals. Long baguettes for special dinners. Braided challahs for Sabbath. Scored patterns on top. Crosses for Easter. Wheat stalks for harvest festivals. Family marks that served as signatures. Walk down a village street, glance through bakery windows, and you could identify the baker by the shape of his loaves before ever tasting them. The craft wasn't anonymous. It was visible, personal, identifiable. Baking tested mastery every single day. Wood or coal-fired brick ovens. No digital thermometers. No programmable controls. The baker learned heat by feel, by sight, by instinct refined over years. Toss a handful of flour on the oven floor. If it browns in 10 seconds, the temperature is right. Load the loaves. Close the heavy door. Wait. Open it. Rotate bread by hand so each loaf gets equal heat. Check color. Lean in. Smell the developing crust. Tap the bottom. Does it sound hollow? Not yet. Close the door. Wait longer. Pull loaves too early, and the center stays gummy, undercooked. Wait too long, and you're feeding charcoal to your family. Every bake was a test. Every day, you proved yourself again. It matched a corporate specification sheet, identical from January to December. From California to Maine, the economics crushed small bakers without mercy. One factory could replace 100 independent bakers. The cost per loaf dropped from 15 cents to 5 cents. Shelf life stretched from 2 days to 2 weeks through preservatives and packaging innovations. Bread that once had to be eaten within 48 hours could now sit on shelves for half a month without visible mold. By the middle of the 20th century, 4 corporations controlled roughly 80% of the bread market. Local bakeries became quaint relics, tourist attractions, or closed entirely. Jobs transformed beyond recognition. Where bakers once kneaded dough by feel, factory operators now monitored screens and adjusted dials. Where judgment once guided every single batch, workers followed protocols and maintenance schedules. Where intimate knowledge of ingredients mattered, employees checked inventory spreadsheets. Modern industrial white bread can be mixed, proofed, baked, sliced, wrapped, and sealed without a single human hand ever touching the actual dough. Some loaves encounter more sensors and cameras than people during their entire journey from wheat to shelf. The craft wasn't automated, it was erased. And most bakers didn't fight back. They just stopped opening their doors in the morning. What we gained and what disappeared forever. What industrial bread delivered to society. Cheap, consistent loaves available in every store, every neighborhood, every small town. Perfectly uniform slices ideal for toasters and sandwich assembly lines. Cities fed efficiently without daily trips to bakeries. Armies supplied reliably across continents. Suburban families freed from bread-making labor. No more planning meals around bakery hours. What vanished with the craft? Thousands of regional bread recipes went extinct within 2 generations. Knowledge of wild fermentation, how to capture yeast from air, how to maintain living starters, how different grains and temperatures affected rise, largely disappeared from common practice. Sourdough starters that had lived for 50, 100, sometimes 200 years in family lineages were discarded or forgotten when the baker closed shop. The skill of reading dough purely by touch, knowing when gluten had developed enough, when hydration was correct, when fermentation had peaked, stopped being taught outside rare artisan schools. The bond between baker and customer dissolved into brand loyalty to corporations. The morning ritual of walking to the bakery, smelling bread from streets away, exchanging news with neighbors, knowing the person who fed your family, all of it replaced by grabbing a plastic-wrapped loaf between the milk and cereal aisles. Progress delivered cheap calories at massive scale, but it removed character, memory, and relationship. And it did so without asking permission. There was no dramatic collapse, no newspaper headlines, no protests in the streets. Just fewer customers each month, fewer warm ovens each year, then locked doors with faded signs. Bakers retrained as truck drivers or factory workers or found other trades. Their names went unrecorded. Their skills died with them. The pattern repeating in your office right now? Bread was only the beginning. The same industrial logic now rewrites knowledge work, word by word, task by task. Work that once required judgment, contextual understanding, and human nuance is being standardized into templates. Templates collapse into dashboards. Dashboards are collapsing into AI prompts. Your custom analysis of market trends becomes a reusable quarterly report template. That template becomes an automated dashboard pulling live data. That dashboard becomes a single prompt. Summarize Q4 performance and highlight risks. At each step, the work gets faster, cheaper, more consistent. At each step, the human who used to do it becomes slightly more optional. Industrial bread succeeded because it was good enough and dramatically cheaper than artisan craft. AI is succeeding for exactly the same reason. The baker who knew every customer's preference by heart was replaced by a national standard that nobody knew personally, but everyone could access. The manager who understands the nuances of team dynamics, project history, and unspoken context is next in line. Not because AI is better at understanding humans, but because it's good enough, faster, and scales infinitely. Next time you pick up a package of sliced bread, hold it for a moment. Notice how perfectly uniform every slice is. No variation in thickness, no cracks, no character. Optimized for efficiency, toasters, and maximum shelf life. Empty of story. Designed to be forgotten. Somewhere far upstream, wood-fired brick ovens cooled for the last time and were never relit. Sourdough starters that had bubbled and risen for generations died untended in dusty corners. Hands that once knew dough by touch could feel gluten developing, sense when fermentation peaked, judge moisture by pressure alone. Those hands found other work, and the knowledge they carried dissolved into history. Progress didn't ask those bakers for permission. It didn't intend them harm. It simply optimized. And optimization has no memory, no loyalty, no sentiment. When AI delivers your next quarterly report, clean, instant, formatted, perfectly generated in seconds, instead of hours, will anyone miss the human analyst who used to bake it with judgment, context, and understanding of what the numbers actually meant? Or will shelves full of good enough bread and good enough analysis? And good enough? Everything simply be enough? The shelf is full now. Everything looks perfect from the outside. And almost no one stops to ask who used to stand here, hands covered in flour, before the machine arrived.